They both entered not guilty pleas. We know that Jake is now being represented by two attorneys from the Public Defender's Office. We have that information up right now. We also know that Rebecca is being represented by Jeff Moore. Now, he also entered Rebecca's not guilty plea, but he also said that he intends to file a motion to change the venue from Riverside to Banning for this case because he says it relates to Cabazon. We're going to continue to press officials to Banning for this case.
Has already gripped the nation, drawing outrage, disbelief, and intense scrutiny from the public. The anticipation is palpable as investigators, legal experts, and ordinary citizens alike wait to see what revelations will emerge when this evidence is officially presented. For months, authorities have painstakingly collected, analyzed, and verified every shred of information that could possibly shed light on Emmanuel's final days. According to insiders familiar with the case, the evidence spans multiple categories, from detailed forensic reports and medical examinations to digital footprints like phone records, messages, and GPS data. Each piece has been meticulously catalogued to construct a timeline, aiming to recreate with precision the tragic events leading up to Emmanuel's death. Prosecutors are reportedly confident that this comprehensive body of evidence will leave the jury with little room to doubt the severity and deliberate nature of the alleged crime. In addition to the forensic and digital evidence, prosecutors are expected to bring forward witness testimonies that could be nothing short of explosive. Neighbors, family friends, and professionals who had prior contact with the Haros are reportedly on the list, each with potentially critical insights into the couple's behavior, interactions, and suspicious actions in the days surrounding Emmanuel's disappearance. These testimonies are anticipated to provide context that no physical evidence alone could convey, revealing patterns of neglect, deception, or intent that could prove pivotal in securing conviction. Perhaps most alarming is that the prosecution's presentation is said to include elements that directly challenge statements previously made by Jake and Rebecca. Investigators allege there are inconsistencies, contradictions, and unexplained gaps in the parents' account. Discrepancies that, when paired with the forensic evidence, could dramatically strengthen the case against them. Legal analysts are already predicting that these revelations will not only shock the courtroom but also ignite national conversations about parental responsibility, criminal accountability, and the systemic failures that may have allowed Emmanuel's tragic death to occur. As September the 16th and 17th approach, the tension continues to mount. Every eye will be on the courtroom, every ear tuned to testimony, and every mind racing to process what could become one of the most high-profile and heartbreaking cases in recent memory. When the evidence is finally laid bare, it may not only redefine public understanding of this tragedy, but also change the course of justice for Emmanuel Haro forever. Jake and Rebecca Haro reported their infant son missing, telling authorities and the public a story that seemed almost too horrific to imagine, that a stranger had abducted their beloved baby during what they described as a violent assault in a U-Caper parking lot. According to their account, the abduction was sudden, brazen, and traumatic, leaving the parents frantic and distraught, racing against time to find Emmanuel before it was too late. The story immediately captured headlines, sparked community outrage, and mobilized local law enforcement in what appeared to be a desperate search for a missing child. Media outlets repeated the narrative almost verbatim, and for a moment, it seemed like a terrifying but plausible case of a stranger taking a helpless infant. But investigators quickly began to notice troubling inconsistencies in the Haros' version of events. Details that should have aligned, the timing of the alleged abduction, eyewitness accounts, and physical evidence of the scene, simply did not add up. Surveillance footage from the parking lot failed to show any signs of a struggle or stranger approaching the couple. Witnesses in the area reported nothing unusual, and forensic experts were unable to confirm the presence of anyone other than the Haros themselves. Every small discrepancy, when pieced together, created a growing sense of doubt among law enforcement. The kidnapping that had initially seemed terrifyingly real may never have occurred at all. As the investigation deepened, prosecutors began to uncover evidence that pointed in a far darker direction, straight back to the Haro home. Physical evidence, digital footprints, and witness statements suggested a troubling pattern of abuse and neglect within the family rather than an external criminal act. Items inside the home, traces of physical trauma on the infant, and inconsistencies in the parent accounts created a picture that was chilling and undeniable. This was not the story of a random, violent abduction, but potentially a deliberate act of harm by the very people who were supposed to protect Emmanuel. Legal experts now describe the case as a textbook example of how abduction narratives can sometimes be fabricated to mask more sinister realities. The alleged stranger in the parking lot becomes a convenient scapegoat, deflecting attention from the true source of danger, the parents themselves. Prosecutors argue that this is exactly what happened in Emmanuel's case. Every piece of evidence meticulously gathered over months of investigation, from digital records to forensic analysis, is now being compiled to demonstrate that the Haro's tale of a kidnapping was a carefully constructed lie designed to mislead authorities and the public while hiding a dark history of abuse and neglect within their own home. The implications of this discovery are profound. What began as a seemingly straightforward missing child case has transformed into a harrowing investigation into parental violence and deception. If the prosecution's evidence holds, it not only shatters a narrative the Haros attempted to present, but also forces a nation to confront the disturbing reality that the greatest threat to Emmanuel may have come from the very people entrusted with his care. So what exactly will prosecutors present at the upcoming preliminary hearing? The evidence is expected to be both detailed and devastating, revealing not only the mechanics of the crime, but also the deliberate efforts by Jake and Rebecca Haro to mislead investigators and the public. From the earliest moments of the investigation, authorities focus on two critical areas: the false narrative presented to law enforcement and the inconsistencies in the Haro statements that quickly raised red flags. Prosecutors are now ready to bring all of this to light in a courtroom setting, providing a clear picture of how the alleged crime unfolded and how the parent attempted to manipulate the narrative to cover their tracks. The first major element prosecutors plan to highlight is a false police report, the fabricated story of a stranger abducting baby Emmanuel in a UK parking lot. According to law enforcement sources, this report was not just inaccurate, it was intentionally misleading. Investigators have stated that the abduction claim wasted critical resources, diverting attention from the home where Emmanuel was actually at risk. Every hour, every officer, and every investigative tool spent chasing this fictitious kidnapper delayed efforts to uncover the truth, possibly contributing to irreversible consequences for the infant. Prosecutors will likely emphasize how this report was carefully crafted to portray the Haros as victims themselves, while simultaneously deflecting suspicion away from their own actions. They will argue that this manipulation of law enforcement demonstrates a calculated intent to obstruct justice from the very beginning of the investigation. The second key focus of the preliminary hearing will be the inconsistencies and contradictions in the Haro statements. Investigators reportedly found that Rebecca's account of the events simply did not align with physical evidence, digital records, and eyewitness observations. At first, she appeared cooperative, providing statements to authorities, but once confronted with facts that contradicted her narrative, she allegedly stopped cooperating entirely. Prosecutors are expected to point out the discrepancies in timing, actions, and locations that emerged from Rebecca's statements, highlighting how these contradictions eroded the credibility of the couple's story. This line of evidence is intended to show not only a failure to tell the truth, but a pattern of deception that could support claims of intentional wrongdoing. Together, these two pillars, the fabricated police report and the conflicting statements, are expected to form the backbone of the prosecution's argument at the preliminary hearing. Legal analysts note that by presenting both the falsified narrative and the evidence of intentional deception, prosecutors aim to convince a court that the Haros' actions were not simply negligent or mistaken, but part of a deliberate scheme to cover up the harm inflicted on Emmanuel. This sets the stage for what could be a dramatic and emotionally charged courtroom proceeding, one that may shock observers with the depth of planning and deception involved. Third, the forensic evidence is expected to be one of the most compelling and unsettling aspects of the case against Jake and Rebecca Haro. According to sources familiar with the investigation, law enforcement conducted extensive searches of the Haro home, meticulously documenting every detail in hopes of uncovering evidence that could explain Emmanuel's disappearance and eventual death. While Emmanuel's body has not yet been recovered, investigators reportedly discovered multiple indicators of foul play, items, traces, and anomalies that, when pieced together, suggest that the infant suffered harm within the home. These findings are likely to include blood analysis, traces of bodily fluids, fabric fibers, and other forensic markers that may link the Haros directly to acts of abuse or negligence. Each piece of evidence has been carefully preserved and analyzed by forensic specialists who are expected to testify at the preliminary hearing, explaining how these indicators point to deliberate harm rather than accidental injury or natural causes. The absence of Emmanuel's body adds a tragic layer of complexity, but prosecutors are confident that the accumulated forensic evidence is sufficient to demonstrate that foul play occurred, leaving little room for doubt regarding the parent's potential culpability. Fourth, prosecutors are also expected to present the tragic history of abuse that Emmanuel allegedly endured over time. Investigators have documented a pattern of mistreatment, neglect, and unsafe living conditions that paint a devastating picture of the environment in which the infant lived. This line of evidence will likely include witness statements from relatives, neighbors, and professionals who had prior interactions with the Haros, as well as medical records that indicate repeated injuries or signs of neglect. Prosecutors will argue that this ongoing abuse was not incidental or accidental. Rather, it reflects a prolonged period of neglect and harm that ultimately culminated in Emmanuel's death. Adding a chilling dimension to this narrative is Jake Haro's prior child abuse conviction. Prosecutors intend to emphasize that this was not a first-time offense, but part of a disturbing pattern of behavior that had been previously documented and should have served as a warning sign. By highlighting his criminal history, the prosecution aims to demonstrate that this tragedy was preventable, that interventions could have occurred, authorities could have acted, and Emmanuel might have been spared if proper safeguard had been in place. This history of abuse strengthens a narrative that the Haro's actions were not isolated incidents but part of a broader pattern of dangerous behavior, underscoring the severity and premeditated nature of the alleged crime. Combined, the forensic findings and documented abuse history are expected to form a compelling argument for the prosecution. They not only detail the circumstances of Emmanuel's death but also paint a stark, tragic picture of preventable suffering. Legal experts warn that when presented alongside the false police report and contradictory statements, these elements could create a near-unassailable case that leaves a profound impact on both the court and the public. Think about that for a moment. A baby, tiny and vulnerable, reported missing under the terrifying circumstances of an alleged abduction, and yet, as investigators dug deeper, the narrative that captured the nation's attention began to unravel. What initially seemed like a shocking case of a stranger taking a helpless infant now appears, according to prosecutors, to have been an elaborate cover-up orchestrated by the very people entrusted with his care. Every detail that was publicly shared, from the frantic police calls to the tearful interviews, is now being scrutinized for signs of deception, and investigators say the evidence points to a calculated attempt to mislead not just law enforcement, but an entire country. Prosecutors are expected to argue forcefully that this was far from an accident or tragic lapse in judgment. The timeline they have constructed, combined with digital records, forensic findings, and witness testimony, paints a chilling picture, a child subjected to ongoing mistreatment, culminating in his death, while his parent allegedly tried to fabricate a story so convincing that it would deflect attention from their own actions. By presenting this evidence in court, prosecutors aim to demonstrate that every lie, every inconsistency, and every false report was a deliberate act of manipulation intended to obscure the truth and avoid accountability. The implications are profound. This case is not just about a missing child or a tragic death. It is about the deliberate decisions made by the people responsible for Emmanuel's life. Each step allegedly taken by Jake and Rebecca Haro, from filing a false police report to providing contradictory statements and attempting to control the narrative in the media, is being framed as part of a conscious effort to hide the harm inflicted on Emmanuel. Prosecutors argue that their actions were premeditated, that there was an awareness of wrongdoing, and that the cover-up was an extension of the very abuse that ultimately caused Emmanuel's death. Legal analysts note that cases like this challenge public perceptions about crime and responsibility. It forces society to confront the uncomfortable reality that sometimes the danger comes not from strangers, but from within the home, from those sworn to protect, nurture, and love the most vulnerable. The story of Emmanuel Haro, as prosecutors intend to present it, is a stark reminder of how manipulation, deceit, and abuse can intertwine to devastating effect. As a preliminary hearing approaches, the courtroom is expected to become a stage where these dark truths are laid bare. The nation will watch as prosecutors methodically expose what they say is a deliberate, chilling sequence of events. A baby suffering, hidden behind a veil of lies, and parents who allegedly attempted to mislead everyone to conceal the reality of what truly happened. In framing the case this way, the prosecution seeks to ensure that Emmanuel's story is not forgotten, and that justice, however delayed, is pursued with the full weight of the law. And now, With a preliminary hearing officially scheduled for September the 16th and 17th, all eyes are on the courthouse, where prosecutors are preparing to lay out every piece of evidence they have painstakingly gathered over the past months. This isn't just another legal proceeding. It is shaping up to be a pivotal moment in a case that has gripped the nation with shock, sorrow, and outrage. According to insiders, the prosecution plans to present a comprehensive, meticulously documented account of the events surrounding baby Emmanuel's disappearance and death, weaving together digital records, forensic findings, witness statements, and the false narratives that Jake and Rebecca Haro allegedly constructed to obscure the truth. Every detail, every inconsistency, every shred of evidence that points to deliberate harm will be on display, leaving the courtroom and the public to confront the grim reality of what prosecutors assert happened within the Haro home. The preliminary hearing could very well serve as a turning point in this heartbreaking case. For months, the story of Emmanuel Haro has been mired in conflicting narratives, speculation, and partial information. Now, for the first time, prosecutors will have the opportunity to present a unified, evidence-backed version of events to a judge, providing a clear picture of the alleged crimes and the deliberate cover-up that followed. The false police report, the inconsistencies in the parents' statements, the forensic indicators of abuse, and the documented history of mistreatment will all be laid bare, a combination of evidence that could dramatically alter the course of the investigation and public perception. Yet, while many hope this hearing will bring clarity, there is also the possibility that new, unsettling details could emerge once the courtroom doors open. Legal experts caution that preliminary hearings often reveal the depth of both the prosecution's and defense's strategies, and in emotionally charged cases like this, every revelation carries a potential to shock, surprise, or even deepen the mystery. Witness testimonies, cross-examinations, and the presentation of sensitive forensic evidence could expose additional truths that have not yet reached the public, further complicating an already tragic story. One thing, however, is beyond dispute. The truth can no longer be hidden. The narrative that began with supposed kidnapping in a parking lot has unraveled, exposing the disturbing possibility that the danger to Emmanuel came from those who were entrusted with his care. As prosecutors prepare to present their case, the nation waits, holding its collective breath, for the moment when these secrets will finally be confronted head-on in open court. The outcome of this hearing may not only determine the immediate legal fate of Jake and Rebecca Haro, but also shape the broader understanding of how such a devastating tragedy could occur and why justice for Emmanuel has been so fiercely pursued. If you want ongoing updates as this case continues to unfold, it is crucial to stay informed and engaged. The story of Emmanuel Haro is far from over, and each new development carries the potential to reshape our understanding of what happened, how it happened, and who is ultimately responsible. From the upcoming preliminary hearing on September the 16th and 17th to the inevitable twists and turns in the investigation and legal proceedings, the case promises to remain a central focus for authorities, the media, and the public alike. By subscribing, you ensure that you will be among the first to receive verified, up-to-date information as prosecutors present evidence, witnesses testify, and the courtroom drama plays out in real time. Justice for Emmanuel is only beginning, and the road ahead is expected to be long, complex, and emotionally charged. Investigators have already uncovered a disturbing pattern of abuse, deception, and deliberate manipulation by the child's parents, and prosecutors are poised to present this in a manner that is both thorough and undeniable. Each revelation could offer new insights into the tragic circumstances that led to Emmanuel's death, as well as the steps authorities are taking to hold Jake and Rebecca Haro accountable. Legal analysts warn that preliminary hearings like this one are often just a first stage in a much larger judicial process, where the full weight of evidence and cross-examinations can expose even more shocking details than those already known. What happens next in this case will likely shock not only those closely following the proceedings but the nation at large. From potential new witness statements to previously undisclosed forensic findings, every aspect of the hearing and the subsequent investigation has a potential to reveal unsettling truths about how a child's life was cut tragically short and how those responsible may have attempted to obscure the facts. The level of detail, planning, and alleged deception that prosecutors are expected to reveal could leave a lasting impression on the public consciousness, forcing society to confront the harsh reality of what may have been preventable. Staying updated is more than just following a story. It is about witnessing justice in action, understanding the legal mechanisms designed to hold perpetrators accountable, and seeing how a community grapples with the aftermath of an unimaginable tragedy. By keeping up with verified updates, viewers will not only track the legal battle, but also gain a clearer understanding of the broader implications for child protection, law enforcement response, and public accountability.